Most women would have swallowed the secret and smiled through the ceremony. She almost did. But something cracked. Not loudly, not with fireworks. It cracked like ice underfoot, quiet, chilling, and irreversible. It happened at her sister's wedding. The day was blindingly perfect. The kind of sunny afternoon where you'd expect laughter to float like butterflies and the scent of roses to forgive every buried grudge. But not every family secret dissolves in sunshine. Some bake and ferment under the surface, waiting for the exact moment when everything is too pristine to be real. Isabel stood beside the velvet-draped archway, her dress champagne gold. Ironic, really, because she hadn't tasted a drop all day. She'd been sober for months. That wasn't something anyone applauded. They all preferred the messier version of her, the one who slurred truths into wine glasses and cried in bathrooms. That version was easier to mock, easier to dismiss. But not today. Today Isabel was sharp, sober, watching. Across the aisle, Chloe glowed in white lace and the illusion of innocence. The golden daughter, the angel child. If Isabel was the shadow, Chloe was the spotlight. That had always been the arrangement. From ballet recitals to birthdays, Chloe's smile always mattered more. Isabel was the punchline, the problem, the embarrassment they kept behind polite smiles and whispered apologies. And now she was the maid of honor. Not because Chloe wanted her there, God no, but because Mom insisted. "It's time you two healed," she'd said, clasping her hands like a saint. "No more drama. This is Chloe's moment. Heal as if wounds that deep ever really close. You ever play the role of the forgiven black sheep? It's suffocating. The pressure to act grateful, to nod along while the people who hurt you get to pretend they were generous. There's no air in that kind of forgiveness. It's a cage padded in silk. And it was in that cage Isabel stood holding Chloe's veil, listening to the soft murmur of guests settling into their seats. Her hands trembled not from nerves, from restraint. Because 2 nights before the wedding, Chloe came to her hotel room. Not to bond, not to apologize, but to make a request. "I need you to keep quiet," she said, her tone breezy but firm. "You're not unstable right now, are you?" Isabel laughed, bitter. "Is that your version of asking how I'm doing?" Chloe rolled her eyes. "I just don't want any weird moments. You tend to get emotional when you drink. And I know things have been hard with you. But don't ruin this, please." Then the kicker. "Besides, you don't want Mom knowing, right?" She said it so casually, as if blackmail had become their love language. That was the moment Isabel realized Chloe knew. Had known, about the affair, about Isabel's 6-year relationship with Ryan, Chloe's now husband, before he ever became hers. Chloe had waited, lurked, and when Isabel hit her lowest, when the alcohol and the grief had made her easy to forget, Chloe struck. Ryan ghosted. Chloe swooped in. No explanation, no acknowledgement, just an invitation to their wedding. Cruelty wrapped in ivory ribbon. And Isabel, she said nothing, until that night in the hotel room. Until Chloe weaponized her silence. "You're right," Isabel had said then, voice like silk over glass. "I don't want Mom knowing." But not for the reason Chloe thought. You see, there's something dangerous about a woman who's been underestimated too long. A woman who has endured her humiliation in silence, who has let the people around her rewrite the story while she watched from the margins. That woman learns to bide her time. She learns patience and precision. So when the priest asked if anyone had a reason the couple should not be wed, and the air turned to glass, no one expected her to speak. But she did. "I do." The words slid through the hush like a knife through lace. Heads snapped. Gasps rose. The air thickened. Chloe's smile froze. And Isabel, she didn't waver. Not even once. Because this wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about reclamation. And some truths are too heavy to carry in silence. A beat of silence followed her words so loud it screamed. The priest blinked, mouth slightly ajar, caught between duty and disbelief. Chloe's hand wrapped delicately around Ryan's arm, tightened so subtly most missed it. But not Isabel. She saw everything. Ryan didn't move. His jaw clenched, a flicker of something behind his eyes, panic maybe, or guilt, or just the cold dread of being exposed. He didn't even look at Chloe. Cowardice tends to freeze like that. And the guests. The crowd of curated smiles and distant relatives and old classmates gathered for a picture-perfect ceremony. They shifted, rustled, whispered. A wave of tension rippled through white linen and garden roses. Isabel took a breath. You ever feel the entire world staring at you and still feel more alone than ever? That's what it was like. But loneliness had long since stopped scaring her. Silence, on the other hand, that had teeth. "I'm sorry," Isabel said, voice shaking only on the first syllable. Then it leveled, hardened. "But I can't let this happen without saying what needs to be said. Chloe, you told me to stay quiet, to protect our family, to keep things drama-free. But you left out the part where you stole the man I was going to marry." Gasps now audible and horrified. Someone dropped a glass. Somewhere a child whimpered. Chloe's lips parted, eyes wide, a perfect mask of fragile innocence. "Isabel, don't do this!" But Isabel had already unspooled the first thread. There was no going back. "I was with Ryan for 6 years. We lived together. We talked about rings, about kids, and then he vanished. No warning, no goodbye, just a ghost." She turned to the guests, and a month later he was with her. No one knew, because I was too ashamed to tell anyone how thoroughly I'd been erased. Eyes now darted between Chloe and Ryan like a tennis match from hell. Some faces turned away embarrassed. Others leaned in hungry for carnage. You see, people don't really care about the truth. They care about the spectacle of it. They love a train wreck as long as it isn't theirs. Ryan finally spoke, voice hoarse. "Izzy, this isn't the time." "Don't you dare call me that!" She snapped, her voice slicing through his like steel. "You lost the right to soften my name when you let me break alone. When you crawled into bed with her while I was still trying to figure out what I did wrong." The wind picked up, fluttering Chloe's veil like a warning flag. Her face now wasn't so much angelic as it was exposed, naked, vulnerable in the worst way, without control. "Chloe knew," Isabel said. "She waited until I was broken, until I was small enough to step over. And then she did. With your help." Chloe shook her head, tears welling up, but even those looked rehearsed. "You don't know what you're saying. We fell in love." "You fell into convenience," Isabel said, stepping closer. "You were always the good one, the favorite, and I was the mess, the drunk, the unstable sister. So when you took him, you knew no one would believe me. You counted on that." A tense pause, one that asked the question no one dared speak. "Is it true? You felt it before, haven't you? That moment when the air feels thinner, when the lies you've stacked start to teeter and everyone's watching to see which brick will fall." Isabel looked at her mother. Her face was pale, lips trembling. "You wanted peace, Mom. You wanted healing," Isabel asked, soft now. "Then you should have looked at both your daughters, not just the one who made you proud." No one spoke, not even the priest, because everyone knew deep down they had witnessed something raw, something rare, not just scandal, but truth bleeding its way out of the beautiful picture they all came to admire. And Isabel, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply walked, out, away, through the aisle where guests turned to part eyes wide, unsure whether to pity her or applaud. But here's the thing most people forget. Sometimes the loudest power move isn't destruction, it's departure. And Chloe, for all her beauty, for all her carefully arranged life, stood frozen in a sea of flowers with a truth she could no longer bury. She didn't run. That's the part no one talks about. They expect the wounded woman to flee, to collapse behind closed doors, to shatter in the arms of some waiting friend who offers tissues and tired cliches. But Isabel didn't give them that performance. She walked slowly, head high, spine straight, breath steady down the aisle, as if she were the bride, and this was her procession. But it wasn't triumph she wore on her face. It was clarity. Outside, the air was thick with the scent of jasmine and summer heat. A distant bird chirped, mocking the silence left behind. Isabel didn't stop walking until she reached the edge of the garden, past the stone fountain, where earlier she'd watched Chloe pose with their mother, giggling, whispering, pretending history was water they could just rinse off. She sat on the low stone wall, feeling the rough surface beneath her hands, and for a moment she allowed herself to feel it all. You've felt it too, haven't you? That sick electric buzz beneath your skin when the thing you've been holding in finally escapes. Relief and terror, love and rage, freedom and mourning, all tangled like wire. Because when you finally speak the truth, there's no pulling it back in. Footsteps approached, hesitant. She didn't look up. Isabel came, a familiar voice, gentler than she expected. It was her mother. Isabel inhaled deeply. "Don't." "I didn't know," her mother whispered. "I'm not sure that makes it better." Silence. Isabel looked up now, meeting her mother's eyes. They were brimming with the kind of guilt only a parent carries. The guilt of seeing the blueprint they thought they followed turn out to be flawed. "You always chose her." Isabel said the words flat. "Even when I was right. Even when I was hurting." "I thought she needed more from me," her mother said. "She was so perfect. I didn't realize how much I took from you to feed that illusion." Isabel studied her, measured the words. Sincerity wasn't her mother's native language, but sometimes even the wrong people stumble into truth. "I didn't ruin her wedding," Isabel said. "She ruined mine." Her mother nodded slowly. "I know that now." Funny how the words she had wanted for years finally arrived just a little too late to matter. The sound of a door creaked behind them, followed by a familiar voice, sharp and cracking. "You couldn't just let me have one day." Chloe. Her makeup had begun to smear, but the fury in her eyes made her look like some war-torn porcelain doll. Beautiful. Broken. Dangerous. "I gave you every day," Isabel said. "This one was mine. You humiliated me." No, Isabel stood now facing her. "You did that to yourself when you chose him. When you stood there smiling like nothing ever happened. You built your fantasy on my grave. I just refused to stay buried." Chloe's eyes flashed. "You think this makes you better than me?" "No," Isabel said quietly. "It just makes me free." There it was, that shift. The first unraveling of the perfect girl's mask. Chloe's breath hitched, but she tried to steal it. She glanced at their mother, who stood between them like some ancient referee, too tired to pick a side anymore. "You always had the drama," Chloe spat. "You always wanted the attention. I was the one who did everything right." "Exactly," Isabel said. "You did everything right even when it was wrong. That's your sickness, Chloe. You'd rather be loved for a lie than hated for the truth." A pause. Chloe stepped forward, her voice lower now. "You ruined your own life. With the drinking, the chaos, the neediness. You were always the one who broke everything." Isabel took that in. Let it settle. And then she smiled, not with joy, but with something older, sharper. "Pity. Maybe," she said. "But at least I never had to steal someone else's life to feel whole." Chloe's face crumpled. A second later, she turned and fled back through the double doors, sobbing. You ever see someone collapse under the weight of their own reflection? It's a strange thing watching the person who once stood above you crack under their own lies. Not because you pushed them, but because you finally stepped out from beneath their shadow. Isabel turned back to the fountain. Her mother still stood there silent. "What now?" she asked. Now, that was the real question. What do you do when the secret is out, when the crowd has scattered and the fairy tale castle you were forced to watch someone else build has crumbled at your feet? You breathe. And you rebuild, not to prove anything, not for applause, but because there is life after the fire. That evening, the reception hall stood half empty. Half the guests had slipped out quietly. The others stayed for the open bar and the spectacle. The DJ still played soft jazz, trying to stitch together a mood that had long since bled out. No one danced, no one toasted. They just hovered around plates of untouched food and centerpieces that no longer seemed beautiful. Inside, Chloe sat hunched over a table, mascara streaked and veil discarded, staring blankly into a glass of untouched champagne. She looked smaller now, not just sad, diminished. Like a balloon deflating in slow motion, all the air of her curated perfection hissing out in painful bursts. Ryan was gone. Disappeared quietly, not even a goodbye. Classic, really. And the whispers. Oh, they were everywhere. Tiny daggers behind napkins and text messages under the tablecloth. Did you know, is it true? She slept with her sister's boyfriend? How could she do that? For the first time, Chloe wasn't the darling. She was the question mark. The scandal. The sister who took instead of the one who suffered. You'd think Isabel would have stayed to watch it unravel, but she didn't. She wasn't hungry for revenge anymore. She didn't need it. Instead, she returned to her hotel, locked the door, and collapsed onto the bed, still dressed in gold satin and silent pride. The air conditioner hummed a lullaby, and the sheets were cool and soft beneath her. For hours she didn't cry. She didn't smile either. She just lay there feeling it, all of it. You ever been still like that? Not numb, not distracted, but present. Aware of every breath like it's your first. That's what it was like. The storm had passed, but it had taken something with it. Later, she sat cross-legged on the floor, phone in hand, staring at a photo she had hidden deep in her gallery. Ryan and her. 2 summers ago. Laughing under a tree, his hand in her hair, her eyes sparkling before the fall, before the silence, before Chloe. She stared at it, then deleted it. Not out of anger, out of mercy. Because keeping it was like keeping a shard of glass in her pocket, just close enough to bleed her when she reached for comfort. A knock came at the door. Isabel rose slowly, her body aching with the weight of all she'd carried. She peeked through the peephole. It was her father. She hesitated, then opened it. He stood there, tie-loosened hair a little gray around the edges. His eyes looked older tonight, less polished, more human. "I don't know what to say," he murmured. "Then don't," Isabel replied. But he didn't leave. Instead, he stepped inside, took a seat on the small armchair, and looked at her like he hadn't seen her in years. "I watched you today," he said. "You didn't fall apart, not like before." Isabel tilted her head. "That's what you were waiting for, wasn't it? For me to fall apart again, so you could keep seeing me as the mess. Easier that way." He winced, but didn't deny it. "I failed you," he said quietly. "I should have listened, should have asked." "You didn't want to know," she said, "because if you knew, you'd have to choose. And choosing her was easier." Silence stretched. He nodded slowly. It was. That confession, it was enough. Not an apology, not absolution, but something honest. "I'm proud of you," he added, "for saying it, for surviving." "Proud now?" she asked. He looked up. "No, proud still." She didn't reply, because the truth was she didn't need his pride anymore. She didn't need anyone's. Not after today. He stood. "If you ever want to come home—" "This is home," she cut in. "Anywhere I choose to heal is home." He nodded again, left quietly. The door clicked shut behind him, and Isabel exhaled a breath that had lived inside her chest for years. The air felt clearer, not lighter, but cleaner, as if the ghosts had finally packed up and moved on. Later she stepped onto the balcony. The night sky hung like a velvet curtain stitched with stars. Somewhere a couple laughed in the distance. A real laugh, not the kind forced for family photos. She let it wash over her. No regrets, just truth. And a quiet kind of peace that grows in the wreckage of lies. A week passed. The wedding that wasn't was already a local legend. Neighbors whispered about it in grocery aisles. Old high school classmates revived forgotten group chats just to dissect every detail. Chloe went radio silent. Ryan had fled to the coast, probably thinking distance would cleanse him. It never does. But Isabel didn't hide. She went back to her apartment in the city, unpacked the suitcase like someone shedding a skin. She donated the gold dress, blocked Ryan's number for good this time, and when the silence came sharp and echoing, she welcomed it. You don't realize how much of your life is lived in performance until you stop performing. Every gesture, every smile, every moment engineered to keep the peace to be palatable. And when you finally drop the act, it's quiet, terrifyingly quiet. But there's power in that quiet, too. Isabel found herself waking earlier, making coffee slowly, reading again. Not scrolling, not numbing, just being. She took walks. She called friends she hadn't spoken to in months, real ones, the ones who'd waited without judgment. One afternoon she passed by a mirror in her hallway and stopped. She didn't recognize herself, not at first. There was something new behind her eyes. Not hardness, not bitterness. Depth, like someone who had seen the inside of the fire and learned to breathe through smoke. Then came the letter. Not an email, not a text. An actual letter, handwritten on cream stationery folded in thirds. No return address. It was from Chloe. Isabel read it twice. The first time her hands trembled. The second time she felt nothing. Chloe had written about shame, about fear, about how it felt to be the one who always did the right thing until she didn't. She admitted to knowing, to watching Ryan and Isabel drift apart and wanting to step in not to help, but to take. "I saw your pain," she wrote, "and I stepped around it like it wasn't real, because if I acknowledged it, I'd have to face what I was doing." At the end of the letter, "You were always the stronger one. I just wore the prettier mask." No apology, but something close to truth. Isabel folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer she never opened. Because some wounds don't need forgiveness to heal. They just need truth and time. Weeks turned into months. The wedding photos vanished from social media. Friends of friends stopped asking what really happened because they already knew or were too ashamed to admit they'd enjoyed the drama more than they cared about the people in it. And Isabel, she didn't chase closure. She created it. She started writing again. Not fiction, not yet, just thoughts, essays, stories that weren't for anyone else's consumption, just her own. Her therapist called it integration. Isabel called it reclamation. You see, when a woman reclaims her voice after years of silence, it doesn't come out pretty. It's jagged, rough-edged, but it's real. And once it starts, it doesn't stop. She stopped needing to explain herself, to justify why she spoke when she did or why she didn't earlier. She stopped wondering if the people who loved her only did so out of obligation. She watched, observed, not with bitterness, with awareness. And from that place, something new began to grow. One night, standing by her window as the city lights blinked like distant stars, Isabel smiled. Not because it was over, but because she was no longer in it. No longer waiting for permission to be whole. No longer twisting herself into something digestible just to be included. She had said the thing no one dared say. And survived. More than that, she had risen. They say some women destroy weddings, but some women destroy illusions. Some women burn down the lie they were handed and walk barefoot through the ash unafraid. The woman who knows her worth doesn't beg, she watches. Then she rises.